Okay. Check test. We're good.
Hello.
Oh, sorry. Check. Very good. Welcome to Review Preview. This is our first gathering. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Miller.
I'm Pam Bentley.
And this is just an opportunity for a little bit of engagement with those who want to tune in. And we call it Review Preview because why, Pam? Why?
Because we're going to review last week's message last Sunday, and we're going to preview what's coming up this Sunday.
Yeah, because you know, a sermon is an experience. You experience it, but then sometimes you don't have enough time to reflect upon it. So this gives us a chance to reflect upon last week's message and then start talking about what to anticipate in this week's message. And hopefully, the review preview kind of reviewing last week and previewing next week will help us better get a grasp of what the truth of Scripture is communicating to us. You know?
Yeah, great. So, Mark, we just started, last Sunday you started a new message series called Labor of Love.
Yes.
So why now? Why a series on love right now?
Well, I think a series on love is probably always relevant, but I think as we have gone through this coronavirus challenge, relationship issues become very important. People have been shut down a little bit more. Perhaps activities and things they've been doing that have sort of masked over relationship challenges may have come to the surface. And we're also entering into a political season. And while the sermon doesn't deal a lot with politics, of course, we have a hard time sometimes loving people who maybe are different from us in their political persuasions. And so this is really about discovering what love really is, which is a set of skills we develop to treat people in a certain way.
Right, yeah. Well, and you know, every family or your coworkers or whoever you're interacting with, everybody's unique, everybody's got their own personality, their own way to communicate, their own wants and their own needs, and so diving into how we can relate to people in a better way, in a loving way, is really valuable right now.
And that's why I call it a skill set, because so often we're trained in our culture to think of love primarily as an emotion. Right. And sometimes we think of love as an emotion that you have no control over. It either hits you or it doesn't hit you. You either feel the love or you don't feel the love. And so you treat people according to how you feel. And what we're trying to do in this series is get people to think of love in a different way, in a biblical way, which is not that love is primarily a feeling. Love is primarily a discipline, a skill set, learning how to treat people a certain way, sometimes whether you feel like it or not. And that's not to say that feelings aren't important.
No, right.
The feelings that we often associate with love, the euphoria, the attraction, the connection, the joy, all of those are great feelings. But the argument I try to make in this past Sunday's message is that while those feelings are nice and they're wonderful to have, they're not love. They just are feelings that we associate with love. In some ways, they're the reward for learning how to love well.
Right. Well, and you know, I think so much in our culture, when we think of love, we go back to that definition in the dictionary of an intense feeling of affection of some sort, right? And so you reference 1 Corinthians 13 in your sermon of love is patient, love is kind, and love does not keep a record of wrongs, and all of those things that do fit into those skill set, that set that you talk about, that we can go back to and kind of really think, okay, I can show love through those actions, not just something that I'm feeling.
Right. You know, when Paul talks about love in 1 Corinthians 13, the great love chapter, when he uses words to describe love, none of the words he uses are emotions.
Right.
They're behaviors, they're attitudinal choices that we make. And when Jesus says the greatest commandment is to love God and then love your neighbors, again, Jesus is not asking us to try to figure out a way to motivate our feelings to come along so that we'll love people. It's making the decision, I'm going to treat people in a certain way, by a certain standard, hold a certain attitude in my heart toward other people that helps me to treat them in that way. But those are choices and decisions and disciplines we develop. They're not feelings we try to conjure up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so in that first message, I was trying to make that point, and maybe I overstated it for some, because I didn't want to make it sound like I don't care about feelings or that feelings aren't important. I think what I tried to say is the danger is when we elevate our feelings to the level where they become the final arbiter of what is true and what is right. And I'll tell you, you hear this kind of stuff out in the popular culture all the time. You got to trust your heart. You got to go with your gut. You got to do what you feel. There may be times when that's helpful, but a lot of times that's not necessarily the best route. I mean, what the Bible says is the heart can be deceitful and wicked and sometimes want the wrong things. And so I'm not saying we discount feelings. I'm just saying we don't let our feelings run our lives.
I think our feelings can lead us towards some things, and our feelings can lead us away from other things. But then, the greatest commandment says love God and love one another. But that part of loving God, staying committed to God, means that we bring him into the equation, that we can feel that feeling and kind of explore that feeling, but then take that to God and say, God, are you going to bless this? Are you going to block this? Where are you leading me in this? And let God work in you and with you and through you to guide you for the next step.
Yeah. God will use feelings to help direct us sometimes, but those feelings need to be calibrated with truth and with discipline and an understanding of what are the right and appropriate ways. I'll tell you, when my kids were teenagers, I wasn't always feeling a lot of love for them, and I'm sure it was reciprocal. But there was a need to show love, demonstrate love by the way I tried to talk to them, the way I tried to control my frustrations about certain things they chose to do or ways they chose to act, and that was hard work, and I didn't always get it right. That's the beauty about this. Love is something we can always improve upon.
Right. Well, right there, as a parent, it is difficult. That is a hard part of parenting, is that discipline, that showing direction to your children but that is displaying love, of helping them make good choices and what you need to do to help them get there. Showing that is out of love that you're doing that, but it's actions you are taking, not necessarily feelings. It's actions you are taking to help your child on the right path.
Yeah, and it's not always easy.
Yeah, it's not.
And sometimes, when you watch movies and read books and magazines and listen to songs, or you hear the quotes from the Hollywood celebrities, they make it sound like love is this really easy thing. You're overwhelmed with feelings, and in my experience, love is work. It's good work. It's hard work. It's meaningful work, but it is work.
It is.
And we're called to do that work. Again, Jesus didn't say do what you feel. Jesus said love. And as I said Sunday in the sermon, when Jesus was being nailed to the cross for the sins of the world, I don't think he was feeling the feelings of love in that moment. He wasn't overwhelmed with goosebumps and warm, fuzzy feelings. He was in agony. And yet what he did for us was the most loving thing anyone's ever done. So, so in that message, just sort of laying the foundation for the rest of the series, I was trying to say, love is a skill set. Loving people learn to use the skills to behave in a certain way toward others to demonstrate love. And that's true in our relationship with God. That's true in our relationship with the people in our relational world. Mm-hmm. And so then we started talking about the love languages that we'll be looking at in this series, based on a book by Gary Chapman called The Love Languages. And it's really, we're talking about, Dr. Chapman calls them love languages. I call them the skills necessary. And so each week we're going to look at each of the skills: the words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, giving gifts, tender touch. These are the ways in which we learn to express love and love other people. Mm-hmm. These are the skills. So this coming week, we're going to look at the skill of words of affirmation, using our words to demonstrate love. Can you recall a time when somebody said something to you that you could tell they were demonstrating love in your relationship with them?
Yeah, I think, for me, there's been times when I've done things and thought they were going unnoticed, and then someone saying a kind word of appreciation for what I was doing really struck home to me. Of an unexpected word like that, just spoken out of kindness to me,
Yeah.
really made such a difference in me, like the energy that I had then to keep going in what that was.
As a pastor, you know what I found with a lot of people who do volunteer work in the church, and what I find is they don't do it for a thank you, and they don't often expect a thank you.
Right.
But when they receive one, it's appreciated.
Yeah.
Because it says, "Hey, I noticed.
Right.
I recognize that you are contributing to the work of the church, and you're making a difference." And so we translate that to every area of our lives. One of the things I talk about this coming week in the message is how words of gratitude are an expression of love. Expressing appreciation to people for what they do. And man, when I was a kid, my parents just drilled this into me all the time. What do you say? What do you say? And I always know that. Thank you. Thank you. And, I would encourage parents and grandparents, really embed that in your children, the need to not just feel grateful, but to say it.
Right.
A lot of times people think, well, I feel thankful, but you need to express it with words, and especially if you're thankful for someone else, something that they've done, or just who they are, to express it, say it. And I know sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I don't want to force my child to say thank you. They won't mean it. They're just saying it. But all internal attitudes first must be externally disciplined. And so as a parent, you make your child say thank you with the hope that if you do it consistently, there'll come a day when they're old enough to be able to realize, oh, saying thank you is important. I'm going to say thank you.
Right. It trains that, that behavior. Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I know, it's like apologizing and a lot of things. Kids struggle with that. Kids struggle to say, I'm sorry, and they struggle to say thank you sometimes. And so even though we're forcing our kids to do it, it forms and shapes their character.
It does, right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, words of gratitude are one of those things that we talk about this coming week, and how to specifically put into your weekly schedule opportunities to say thank you, and opportunities to look for ways to express thanks. And in our relationship with God, expressing thanks is part of the way we tell God we love Him.
Yeah.
To be able to look around and be grateful. And I think right now during this coronavirus thing we've been going through, it's so easy to focus on what we don't have, or what we can't do, or what isn't what it used to be. It's so important to counter that by starting to take an inventory of what we're thankful for.
Yeah. I think just words of affirmation, I think also it helps people feel that they are understood in a way, that whatever you may have been doing, for someone to recognize that, for someone to whether it is saying thank you for something, or just recognizing that you're going through a difficult time, or whatever it might be, that saying some sort of a word to affirm the feelings that you have, I think helps people to say, I understand you, and
yeah, we have a need to feel validated.
Right.
You don't have to agree with me on everything, but at least to be able to say, I understand
how you feel.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I understand where you're coming from, and I think that's one of the things that's missing in our culture today.
Right. I think so too. Right.
We are in a time where nobody wants to listen to each other. We just want to, I'm overgeneralizing, but a lot of folks just want to kind of verbally attack each other, and and if I just can find the right zinger, you're going to change your mind and agree with me on everything. And,
right.
And no, it's much more likely if I will listen carefully, validate what you're saying and what you're feeling and understand it. Now we're in a position where we can actually have a real conversation.
Right, and that is demonstrating love right
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
because right. I think there's so much divisiveness in our world, so much so much feeling of isolation in so many different capacities that I think in those kinds of settings, in isolation of ourselves, I think we get in our heads and we don't having somebody recognize what we're going through, validating our feelings, validating us and what we're doing just goes so far.
Yeah. And so, we'll talk about gratitude this week. We also want to talk about encouragement. How do we encourage? The biblical word for encouragement is actually the word edify, where we get our word edifice or building, and so it means to build someone up. It doesn't mean to butter them up. It doesn't mean to lie and say, "Oh, you're so wonderful." We're not trying to heap on false praise, but finding a way to encourage somebody because folks are easily discouraged today,
Right.
and folks are often feeling down on themselves. I will never forget, I don't know how you feel about Joel Osteen, the TV preacher. He's okay. I don't have a problem with him. I got some friends, pastor friends, who just can't stand him, thinks he's, gospel light, and there may be some truth to some of that, but I remember watching Joel Osteen be interviewed one time about his ministry, and he said what he recognized is that people need to be encouraged, and the message of Jesus is the most encouraging message. And so Joel Osteen feels like his ministry is about encouraging people with the good news of Jesus Christ. And it's hard to argue with that. That's
right.
a pretty good good approach.
Right.
So looking for ways to encourage other people is one of the ways we express love.
And it's, I think, on any given day, I think the message that we receive through the media or around us can be hurtful messages. They can be things that just bring us down, that time after time, if that is what we're hearing, that weighs on us. And so we, as Christians, have this great opportunity to change that narrative, even in just a small way with someone, in one thing that we say. One thing that we say could change that all around, for every 5, awful things that somebody hears, we could be the opportunity for them to hear that one encouraging thing out of love.
They say the ratio is 5 to 1. People and parents, this is really important for parents. Your children need 5 positive words of encouragement for every 1 word of correction. So if we're always correcting our kids, beating on our kids, telling them what they're doing wrong, there is a place to do that. That's part of parenting.
Right.
But the ratio should be, I'm 5 times more likely to encourage you, to thank you, to build you up, to look at the positives, and then I can correct you.
I think there's got to be that balance, because otherwise, if it's constant beating you down, or not beating you, but tearing you down or correcting you in that way, there comes a time where if that is repeated and repeated so much, I think there's just this block of listening at all. So you kind of lose your effectiveness that way, because it's just more of that same. So you gotta watch the tone that you use. It's all in that delivery of what you're saying, but making sure that there is that encouraging word that's in there.
I got to tell you, as a pastor, there are folks who every time, not in this church, of course, but in churches I've been in, there are folks that all the time they're complaining about something. They're unhappy about something. They're griping about something. And it may even be some things that are legitimate. But after a while, if every time you're interacting with them, they're wanting to complain and gripe and tell you what's wrong, after a while, their words don't have any more impact or weight, because you're like, oh, that's just who you are. You're going to complain about everything. But you take someone who's a positive encourager. When they come with a concern or a complaint or an issue, I'm I'm all ears because
Right.
this is a person that's not usually doing that sort of thing.
Right.
So, and I think that's human nature. If there's someone that's always the grump in the neighborhood or the grump at the office or the grump around the house and all they're doing all the time is, tearing things down and complaining and griping, after a while, people just don't listen
Kinda
anymore.
tune it
They just
out,
tune it out.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why words of encouragement and words of gratitude. And then the one other expression of love through words that I talk about on Sunday, there's a whole lot more, but time was limited. So
Yeah.
the other thing I mentioned was learning to express your viewpoints and opinions with grace. And that goes back to what we were talking earlier about the political world in which
Right.
we live in right now.
Right.
It's fine to have deep convictions about politics and values and all kinds of things. I got lots of convictions. You do too.
Right. Yeah.
But learning to express them in a way that's gracious and not harsh or angry or condescending, I think is really important, especially in today's
In
world.
today's world, for sure. Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
like my view is
Yeah.
on social media, I express no viewpoints or opinions on political or social justice issues on social media because, frankly, it's just going to come across in a way that's misunderstood. I don't object to other people doing it, but for me, I'm really careful about that. It's hard right now to say a gracious word that people can hear. But if we're going to express a viewpoint or an opinion, emphasizing that we do it graciously is really important.
That's really important
Yeah,
this
yeah.
season. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so anyway, so that's kind of what we talked about last week, what we're talking about this week. Love is a skill, and we look at the skill of using words and how we go about using words to demonstrate love, gratitude, encouragement, and expressing viewpoints with grace.
This is a great series. You mentioned something earlier about, we see in movies or magazines or whatnot, celebrities, we see images of what love is and what love should be or what love could be. And I think it creates for a lot of us, in some way or another, I think we come with these unclear expectations, or unrealistic expectations of what our relationships should be or could be, and then that can turn into unmet expectations that people have. But by digging in deeper to these love languages and seeing how different people feel love and accept love and how we can develop those skills, I think that can help us so much to be relating to the people around us in so many ways.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about love is if we focus more on how can I give love rather than am I getting enough love,
right?
All of a sudden that changes your focus. And see, the most important question in a marriage is not do I feel loved. The question is, does my spouse feel loved by me?
That's good.
Now, that's not to say if you're in a really bad marriage, you don't need to have a conversation about the spouse not demonstrating love to you. But I find that if I'm focusing more on how am I expressing love to others, that puts me then in a position to be better able to experience love myself. So we're about out of time, but we do want to open up for question and answer. If you have a question about love or relationships or sermons or anything, now's an opportunity to go ahead and type that in or check in. If you have any comments you want to make, now's the time to do that. So we'll see here if we've got any. I don't know if they're going to come up on the screen, but I've got my computer here, so let me log in real quick. See if anybody has anything they want to say. You can use the chat feature. Oh, here's a question. How is loving tied into forgiveness? How is loving tied into forgiveness? I think that's a great question.
That's a great question.
Forgiveness is one of those acts of love. It's both an act that we have to agree to do. You make that decision, but then it's also something we have to repeat doing over and over. Because here's what I've discovered. When you've been hurt deeply, you can make that decision, I'm going to forgive, and you can mean it. And then 10 minutes later, you find yourself ruminating on how that person hurt you and how much it ticks you off.
I think that goes back to, keep no record of wrongs. If we're truly going to keep no record of wrongs out of love, that means we do have to be able to let go of that. We have to say that happened in the past, and we're going to leave that in the past, and we're going to move on in that capacity in terms of being able to move on ourselves.
And I always tell people, depending on the situation, forgiving somebody doesn't mean you minimize what they've done to you, or you pretend it wasn't a big deal, or you have to be their best friend even though they've hurt. No, but it means you acknowledge the pain, but you choose not to focus on it and let it continue to hold you back.
Hold you back, right? Right.
So, another question: Are you gonna talk about physical love? And we will when we get to tender touch. We'll deal with it very approprially. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and that's coming in the weeks ahead. So just those are a couple of questions we have. We're about out of time. So Pam, anything else you want to add?
I'm excited to see what we've got in this whole series. I think it's a great topic for us right now. So relevant, so needed right now as we head into election time, and just for us, through all of this, the season of coronavirus, quarantine and all of that. There's just so much that this series can teach us.
Yeah, I think this learning to love well is really the key to experiencing the life that God intends for us to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks
Take care.
for joining us.
All right.